People crossed the street when they saw him coming. Some whispered, others stared, then quickly looked away. Nasor Zawadi, the scarred billionaire, no one dared approach. His face told a story the world had already judged without ever hearing it. But one afternoon, in the middle of a noisy African market, something impossible happened. A poor street girl looked at him and smiled, not with fear, not with pity, with warmth. And in that single moment, the man everyone feared felt something break inside him. Was it anger or the beginning of something he had buried long ago? Before we continue, tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? And if stories like this move, you don't forget to subscribe. Nasor Zawadi did not need to speak loudly to command a room. Silence followed him wherever he went. In Dar es Salaam, his name carried weight heavier than money. Zawadi Holdings stood tall above the city, a symbol of wealth, power, and control. His influence stretched across East Africa: construction, logistics, luxury estates. Everything moved when Nasser decided it should. And yet, for all his power, there was one thing he could not control: how people looked at him, or rather, how they refused to. The scars on Nasser's face were impossible to ignore. Jagged lines carved across his left cheek, trailing toward his jaw, uneven and raw, a permanent mark left behind by a past no one dared to ask about. The right side of his face still held traces of the man he once was: sharp, composed, almost striking. But no one looked long enough to see both sides. They saw the scars, and they judged. Children hid behind their mothers. Adults whispered as he passed. Some stared, unable to hide their curiosity. Others quickly looked away, as though eye contact itself might offend him. Nasser noticed everything. He noticed the receptionist's forced smile that never reached her eyes. He noticed how security guards stood straighter, not out of respect, but fear. He noticed how conversations ended the moment he entered a space. At first, years ago, it had felt like a knife. Now it felt like armor. On the 32nd floor of Zawadi Holdings, the weekly executive meeting had already begun when the doors opened. The moment Nasser stepped in, every voice disappeared. 15 people sat around a long table: managers, investors, advisors, all powerful in their own right. But in his presence, they became something else entirely. Careful, nervous, small. Baraka Mwinyi, the operations director, stood quickly. Too quickly. His chair scraped loudly against the polished floor. "Good morning, sir," he said. Nasser didn't respond. He simply walked to his seat at the head of the table and sat down. "Continue." That was all he said. Baraka cleared his throat and began presenting quarterly reports. His voice wavered slightly at first, but he forced himself to continue: numbers, projections, expansions. He spoke faster than usual, as if finishing quickly would reduce the pressure. Nasser listened without interrupting, but his eyes moved from one face to another, watching, measuring. Lydia Wambui, head of public relations, took over next. Elegant, composed, always controlled. Except today, her fingers betrayed her, tapping lightly against her tablet. "Sir," she began, "regarding your upcoming public engagement, we have made adjustments to ensure minimal direct interaction." Nasser leaned back slightly. "Why?" The question was simple, but the room tightened instantly. Lydia hesitated, choosing her words carefully. It is for your safety, sir. Nasser's gaze sharpened. My safety? Yes, she said. Large crowds can be unpredictable. There was a pause. Then Nasser spoke again, quieter this time. Say it properly. Lydia's lips parted, then closed again. Across the table, Mr. Otieno Kamau shifted in his seat. Nasor, what she means is public perception is delicate. We must be strategic. Strategic, Nasor repeated. He turned his face slightly toward the light, not hiding the scars, not softening them. A few people instinctively looked away. That small movement did not escape him. It never did. Strategic, he said again. Meaning, keep people from seeing me too closely. No one answered, because it was true. And everyone, she knew it. Nasser stood up slowly. Chairs stiffened. Eyes dropped. Cancel it, he said. Lydia blinked. Sir, the event and the campaign. But she stopped herself. Sir, this was approved by the board. I am aware, Nasser replied, and I am overruling it. Otieno leaned forward. You cannot isolate yourself like this forever. Nasser looked at him. There was no anger in his eyes. That was what made it worse. I am not isolating myself, he said. But even as the words left his mouth, something inside him resisted them. Because deep down he knew he was, not from the world, but from the possibility of being seen without fear. The meeting ended shortly after. No one argued further. Papers were gathered quickly. Chairs moved carefully. People avoided lingering too long. Fear did not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looked like efficiency. When the room emptied, Nasser remained seated for a moment, staring at the glass wall overlooking the city. From this height, everything looked calm, orderly, distant. Down below, life was different, loud. Wood, messy, cool. His phone buzzed once on the table. A message from his driver, sir. The car is ready. Nasser picked up his coat and walked out. In the hallway, employees stepped aside as he passed. Not abruptly, not obviously, but enough. Always enough. A young intern carrying a stack of documents froze when she saw him. Her grip tightened, then slipped. Papers scattered across the floor, her face drained of color. I'm sorry, sir, she whispered, dropping to her knees. Nasser stopped. For a brief second, something flickered in his chest. Something human. Something almost gentle. He could have helped her. He could have said it didn't matter. But the moment passed. Be careful, he said simply. The girl nodded quickly, her hands shaking as she gathered the papers. Nasser continued walking. Behind him, he heard her exhale in relief, as if she had just avoided punishment. That sound followed him all the way to the elevator. Downstairs, the lobby gleamed with polished marble and controlled smiles. The receptionist straightened when she saw him. Good morning, Mr. Zawadi, she said. It was already afternoon. Nasser looked at her. Her expression faltered. I mean, good afternoon, sir. He said nothing. The glass doors opened and warm city air rushed in. Outside, his black SUV waited. Quito. His driver opened the door immediately. Home, sir, Quito asked. Nasser paused. Beyond the building, the city moved without hesitation. Vendors shouting buses, honking people, living without permission. For a moment he watched them. Then he spoke. No, Quito waited. Drive through Cariacu. A flicker of surprise crossed the driver's face, but he nodded. Yes, sir. As the car merged into traffic, Nasser leaned back, hidden behind tinted glass. The city passed by in color and movement. Fruit stalls, street food, children laughing, women bargaining men, carrying goods on their shoulders, life unfiltered, unafraid. He watched it all in silence. Like someone standing outside a world he no longer belonged to, and somewhere in that crowded market, without knowing it yet, a girl named Amina Njeri was about to look at him differently than anyone ever had, not with fear, not with pity, but with something far more dangerous. Kindness. Amina Njeri woke before the sun rose. The small room she shared with her younger brother was still wrapped in the quiet blue of early morning. The air was warm, carrying the faint smell of charcoal from neighboring homes, where other early risers were already preparing for the day. She sat up slowly, careful not to wake Juma. For a moment, she just watched him. His breathing was uneven again. That worried her. Juma Njeri was only 12, but illness had already taken too much from him. His strength, his appetite, his ability to run like other boys, his age. Some days he seemed almost normal, laughing, teasing her, asking endless questions. Other days, like this one, he looked fragile, as if the world might break him without even trying. Amina reached out and gently touched his forehead. Still warm. Not a fever yet, but close. She swallowed the worry rising in her chest. Not today, she told herself. Not again. Rest, she whispered softly, even though he was asleep. I'll be back soon. She stood, tied her faded headscarf, and slipped into her worn sandals. Her dress, once bright blue, had faded from too many washes, the fabric thinning at the edges. But it was clean. She always made sure of that. Outside, the narrow street was beginning to wake. Vendors pushed carts into position. Women balanced baskets on their heads. A distant radio played an old Swahili song crackling softly through the morning air. Amina moved quickly. Every minute mattered. At her small roadside stall in Cariacu Market, she began setting up. A wooden table, a charcoal stove, a pot of rice, beans seasoned with onions and spices, fried plantains, simple food but honest, filling, and affordable. Her kind of business. By the time the sun rose fully, the market had come alive. Voices layered over each other, bargaining, laughing, arguing. The smell of food mixed with dust and heat. People moved in every direction, chasing something, money, survival, hope. Amina stood behind her stall, smiling as her first customers approached. Kerbu she greeted warmly. Welcome. Her voice carried something rare. Not just politeness, genuine warmth. An older woman came first, counting coins carefully, before placing them on the table. Amina didn't rush her. She never did. Add a little more rice, the woman said quietly. Amina nodded and did exactly that, even though the payment didn't quite cover it. Thank you, my daughter, the woman said. Amina smiled. Eat well. Moments like that mattered to her. More than profit. More than anything. As the morning passed, business grew steady. Workers on their way to construction sites. Drivers grabbing quick meals. students rushing between classes. And then a black SUV slowed down near the edge of the market. People noticed. They always did. Expensive cars did not belong here. They passed through, but they did not stop. This one didn't stop either. But it slowed, just enough for eyes to follow it. Amina glanced up briefly, then returned to her work. Cars like that had nothing to do with her life, or so she thought. "Hey!" A sharp voice cut through the noise. Amina looked up. A woman dressed in designer clothes stood in front of her stall, sunglasses resting high on her head. Her expression was already annoyed. How much the woman demanded? Amina told her the price. The woman frowned. For this, she said, gesturing dismissively at the food, "You people always overcharge." Amina kept her tone calm. "It's fresh, and the portion is fair." The woman laughed coldly. "Fair? This looks like something you'd feed animals." A few nearby vendors fell silent, sensing tension. Amina felt the sting of the words, but she didn't react. "I can reduce the portion if you prefer," she said gently, "so the price matches." The woman stared at her, clearly expecting resistance anger, something she could push against. Instead, she found calm. That annoyed her even more. "Forget it," the woman snapped. "I wouldn't eat this even if it were free." She turned sharply and walked away. Amina watched her go, then exhaled slowly. It wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. Still, something about it lingered. Not the insult, but the reminder. No matter how hard she worked, some people would always see her as less. Behind her, a small voice spoke. "Why didn't you shout at her?" Amina turned. A boy, one of the local children, who often lingered near her stall, looked up at her with curiosity. She was rude. Amina smiled faintly. "Yes. So why didn't you fight back?" Amina crouched slightly to meet his eyes. "Because anger doesn't fill empty stomachs," she said, "and it doesn't heal anything either." The boy considered that, then nodded as if storing the lesson somewhere important. By midday, the heat had intensified. Sweat gathered at Amina's temples, but she kept working. Every plate she served was a step closer to buying Juma's medicine. Every coin mattered. And still, it wasn't enough. She knew it. The doctor had been clear last week. He needs proper treatment, not just small doses, something stronger, something expensive, something she could not yet afford. Her hands moved automatically as she served food, but her mind drifted. What if Juma got worse? What if she couldn't help him? The thought tightened around her chest like a rope. She pushed it away. Focus, work, hope. That was all she had. Later in the afternoon, when the crowd thinned slightly, a man approached her stall. He was well-dressed, older, confident in a way that suggested money had always been part of his life. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "You're Amina, right?" She nodded cautiously. "Yes. I've been watching you," he said. Something in his tone made her uneasy. "I see how hard you work, how polite you are." Amina stayed silent. "You have potential," he continued, "but you're wasting it here." She straightened slightly. "This is honest work." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, but there are..." easier ways to earn more. There it was, the offer she had heard before, just phrased differently. Amina's stomach tightened. "I'm not interested," she said, calmly. He tilted his head. "You haven't even heard what I'm offering. I don't need to," she replied. For a moment, his expression hardened. "You think you're better than this?" he asked quietly. "No," Amina said. "I just know what I'm worth." The man studied her irritation, flickering beneath his composure. Then he laughed, softly. "You'll regret this," he said. Maybe she answered. "But not today." He shook his head and walked away. Amina watched him disappear into the crowd, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. Opportunities like that could change everything. Money, stability, security for Juma. But at what cost? She turned back to her stall. Some lines she would not cross, not even for survival. As the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the market, Amina packed up what little remained of her food. It hadn't been a bad day, but it hadn't been enough either. It was never enough. She counted her earnings carefully, separating coins into small groups: medicine, food, rent. The numbers didn't add up. They never did. For a moment, she closed her eyes, not in defeat, but in quiet determination. "I'll find a way," she whispered. She always did. As she lifted her basket and began the walk home, the market continued behind her, loud, alive, indifferent. And somewhere, not far away, behind dark glass and silent observation, a man named Nasor Zawadi had already begun noticing her. Not because she was loud, not because she was different, but because in a world that feared him, she did not seem to fear anything at all. The streets of Kariakou were at their loudest when Nasor Zawadi arrived. It was late afternoon, the hour when heat clung to the skin and the market pulsed with restless energy. Vendors shouted final prices. Buyers argued with urgency. The scent of grilled meat, fried plantains, and dust-filled air blended into something raw and alive. Nasser's black SUV moved slowly through the crowded road, its polished surface reflecting a world it did not belong to. Inside silence, outside life. Keto kept his hands steady on the wheel, carefully navigating between pedestrians and carts. He didn't ask why Nasser had chosen this route. Over the years, he had learned that his employer did not explain his decisions, but he did observe them. And this was unusual. Nasser rarely entered places like this. Too exposed, too real, too human. "Slow down," Nasser said quietly. Keto obeyed immediately. The car crawled forward. Through the tinted window, Nasser watched everything. A woman bargaining fiercely over tomatoes. A young boy chasing a tire down the street, laughing without restraint. An old man sitting under a torn umbrella, counting coins with careful fingers. No one here knew who he was. And yet, if they did, would they react the same way as everyone else? The thought lingered. Then something caught his attention. A small food stall on the side of the road. Simple, nothing extraordinary. But the girl behind it, she moved differently. She wasn't rushing like the others. She wasn't shouting to attract customers. She was present, calm, focused. And when someone approached her, she smiled. Not the kind of smile people used to survive. Not forced, Not careful, but genuine. Nasser's gaze sharpened. "Stop," he said. Quito hesitated for a fraction of a second, then pulled the car to the side. The engine remained running. The air inside the SUV stayed cool, untouched by the heat outside. But Nasser did not move immediately. He kept watching. The girl handed a plate of food to a customer, an older man who looked tired, worn by life. Their exchange was brief, but something about it lingered. Respect, kindness, a quiet dignity that did not depend on money. Nasser had seen thousands of people. He had built deals with powerful men, negotiated across continents, commanded rooms filled with influence. But this small moment felt different. Without fully deciding to, he opened the door. The heat hit him instantly. Voices rose around him. And just like that, the air changed. People noticed. It started with one glance, then another, then whispers. A woman pulled her child closer. A man paused mid-sentence. A group of vendors fell unusually quiet. Fear moved faster than sound. Nasser stepped onto the street. Every step he took created space around him. No one told people to move. They just did, instinctively, naturally, as if something inside them said, "Stay away." He was used to it. But today, for some reason, he felt it more. The distance, the silence, the invisible wall that followed him everywhere. And then he reached the stall. Amin and Jerry looked up. For a brief moment, everything slowed. She saw him, really saw him. Not just the scars, not just the expensive suit, not just the presence that made everyone else step back. Her eyes met his. There was no shock, no fear, no quick glance away, just curiosity. And then she smiled. "Caribou," she said gently. "You're welcome." The word hung in the air. Warm, simple, real. Nasser froze. Not physically, but inside. Because something about that moment felt impossible. No hesitation, no calculation, no fear, just kindness. He had spent years surrounded by people who spoke carefully, who measured their words, who adjusted their tone, depending on his mood, his power, his presence. But this girl, she had done none of that. She didn't know him, and she didn't seem to care. For a second, Nasser forgot how to respond. Amina tilted her head, slightly, noticing the pause. "Are you hungry?" she asked. Her voice remained calm, unchanged, as if she were speaking to any other customer. Nasser blinked once. "Yes," he said, finally. The word came out quieter than he expected. Amna nodded and turned to prepare a plate. Her movements were efficient, practiced. Rice beans, a small portion of fried plantains. Nothing luxurious, nothing extravagant. But everything was done with care. Nasser watched her hands. Steady, confident, unafraid. Around them, the market remained strangely divided. People continued moving, but with awareness. Watching, whispering. Some tried not to stare, others failed. Amina, however, did not react to any of it. She placed the plate in front of him. "Here," she said. Nasser looked down at the food, then back at her. How much, he asked. She told him the price. It was so small compared to what he usually spent that it almost felt unreal. He reached into his pocket, pulled out money, and handed it to her. She counted it quickly, then frowned slightly. "You gave too much," she said. Nasser didn't answer. "It's fine," he added. But Amina shook her head. "No," she said simply. She reached into a small container, counted the correct change, and placed it carefully on the table in front of him. "Take it," she said. Nasser stared at the coins. No one had ever insisted on returning his money before. Not like this. Not without fear. Not without trying to please him. He slowly picked up the change. Their fingers almost touched. Amina didn't pull back, didn't flinch, didn't react. She simply smiled again. "Eat before it gets cold," she said. Nasser hesitated. Then, for the first time in years, he did something unexpected. He sat down, right there, on a simple wooden stool beside her stall. The market seemed to pause. A man like him, sitting there, eating street food. It didn't make sense. But Nasser didn't care. He lifted the spoon and took a bite. The food was warm, simple, honest. Nothing like the carefully prepared meals he was used to, and yet it felt real. For a moment, he forgot the whispers, forgot the distance, forgot the fear that followed him everywhere. Amina turned to serve another customer, continuing her work as if nothing unusual had happened, as if he were just another man. And that more than anything unsettled him. Because, for the first time in a long time, Nasser Zawadi was not being treated like a scar, or a shadow, or a warning. He was just a person sitting at a small stall in a crowded market, eating, breathing, existing. And something deep inside him, something he had buried beneath years of silence, began to shift. Not loudly, not suddenly, but enough to be felt, enough to matter, enough to change everything. Nasser Zawadi did not return to Karyaku by accident. The next day he told himself it was curiosity, nothing more. He had meetings, contracts waiting, decisions that would move millions of dollars across borders. His schedule had always been tight, structured, efficient. Yet somehow, late in the afternoon, his car was back on the same road. "Slow down," he said again. Keto didn't question it this time. The SUV eased into the familiar chaos of the market, blending once more into a world that did not belong to Nasser, but was beginning to pull at him in ways he did not understand. From behind the tinted window he searched. Not consciously, not deliberately, but his eyes moved until they found her. Amna Neri. She was exactly where she had been the day before. Behind her small stall, serving food, smiling, moving with that same quiet confidence. The sunlight caught the edges of her headscarf, and for a moment she seemed almost untouched by the struggle surrounding her. Nasser felt something tighten in his chest. Relief. The word surprised him. Why should it matter that she was there? Why should it matter at all? "Stop," he said. The car pulled over again. This time, Nasser didn't hesitate. He stepped out. The reaction from the crowd was immediate. Distance, silence, whispers. The same pattern, repeated. But Nasser barely noticed. His focus was already fixed. Amina looked up when his shadow reached her stall. Recognition flickered in her eyes, but not shock, not fear, just Familiarity. You came back, she said, her tone light, almost casual. Nasser paused. Most people would have greeted him differently, more carefully, more cautiously. But she spoke as if his return was simple, expected. I did, he replied. Amina nodded as if that was enough explanation. Are you hungry again, she asked. There was no mockery in her voice, no assumption, just a question. Yes, Nasser said. He wasn't entirely sure if it was true, but he said it anyway. Amina prepared the food without delay. The same careful movements, the same attention to detail, the same quiet rhythm that seemed untouched by the tension surrounding them. Nasser watched her more closely this time, not just her hands, but her face. There were signs of fatigue, faint shadows under her eyes, the kind that came from long days and short nights. Her clothes were worn but clean. Her posture straight, despite the weight she clearly carried. She was struggling. That much was obvious. And yet, she smiled, not out of habit, but from something deeper. Here, she said, placing the plate in front of him. Nasser took a seat again. The same stool, the same place. Around them, the market reacted just as it had before, subtle, uneasy, watchful. Amina didn't acknowledge it. Do you always come here? Nasser asked after a moment. It was a simple question, but for him, it was unusual. He didn't ask questions like that, not to strangers, not to anyone. Amina glanced at him briefly before returning to her work. Every day, she said, this is how I live. Her answer was direct, honest. No attempt to impress, no attempt to hide. Nasser nodded slightly. You don't seem afraid, he said. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Amina paused. Then she looked at him fully. Should I be? She asked. The question was calm, but it landed heavily. Nasser held her gaze. Most people avoided it. She didn't. People are, he said. Amina studied him for a moment. Not the way others did. Not focusing only on the scars, but on him. I don't know them, she replied. I only know what I see. And what do you see? Nasser asked. Quietly. There was a small pause. Amina considered the question seriously. Then she answered. A man who came back for food, she said. Nothing more, nothing less. Nasser felt something shift again inside him. Something unfamiliar. Something he didn't know how to control. Before he could respond, another customer approached a young man in worn clothes, holding a few coins in his hand. He looked nervous. Can I get something small? He asked. Amina nodded immediately. Of course. She took the coins, glanced at them briefly, and served him a portion that was slightly larger than what he had paid for. The young man noticed. You gave me too much, he said. Amina smiled faintly. Eat, she said. You look like you need it. He hesitated. Thank you, he said quietly, before walking away. Nasser watched the exchange. Every detail. You do that often? He asked. Amina shrugged slightly. When I can. And when you can't. She met his eyes again. I still try. There was no pride in her voice, no expectation of praise, just truth. Nasser looked down at his plate. For years, he had measured people by loyalty, intelligence, usefulness. by what they could bring, what they could build, what they could protect. But this kind of value had never been part of his calculations. Why, he asked. Amina tilted her head. Why what? Why be kind when you don't have enough for yourself? The question was not mocking. It was genuine. Amina thought for a moment. Then she answered softly, because I know what it feels like to have nothing. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. And I don't want someone else to feel that way, if I can help it. Nasser didn't respond. He couldn't, because something about her answer cut deeper than he expected. Around them, the market continued its restless movement. But for Nasser, time slowed. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business, or power, or control. He was thinking about something far more dangerous: connection. Amina turned away to serve another customer, leaving him alone with his thoughts. And for a brief moment, Nasser Zawadi felt something he had not allowed himself to feel in a long time. Curiosity, not about profit, not about strategy, but about a person. A girl who had nothing yet seemed to carry something he had lost, something he didn't even know how to name anymore. As he finished his meal, he reached into his pocket again. But this time, he paused. Then slowly, he placed the exact amount on the table. No more, no less. Amina noticed. A small smile touched her lips. See, she said lightly. You're learning. Nasser almost smiled. Almost. But instead he stood. And for the first time he hesitated before leaving, as if walking away from something important, something unfinished. He didn't understand it, not yet, but he felt it, and that was enough. That night, Amin and Jerry did not sleep. The small room felt tighter than usual, as if the walls themselves understood the weight pressing down on her. Outside, the distant noise of the city had quieted, replaced by the occasional passing motorbike and the restless hum of night insects. Inside, only breathing. Juma's breathing. Uneven, shallow. Amina sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. His skin was warmer. Now, not just the gentle warmth she had felt in the morning, but something deeper. Something dangerous. Juma, she whispered softly. Can you hear me? His eyes fluttered open briefly. Tired? He murmured. Her chest tightened. I know, she said, forcing a small smile. Just rest. But she knew rest wasn't enough anymore. The medicine she had bought in small portions, the herbs, the advice from neighbors, none of it was working. And the doctor's words echoed in her mind again. He needs proper treatment. Proper treatment meant money. More money than she had. More money than she could imagine earning quickly. Amina looked at the small container beside her coins from the day's work. She had already counted them 3 times. It wasn't enough, not even close. For a moment, fear crept in, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet. Heavy. What? If she couldn't save him? The thought sat in her chest like a stone. No, she whispered to herself. She couldn't think like that. She wouldn't. She adjusted the thin blanket over Juma and stood slowly. Her legs ached from the long day, but she ignored it. Pain had never been something she had time to focus on. She moved to the corner of the room where a small wooden box sat. Inside, everything she owned that had value. A few pieces of old jewelry, a pair of earrings her mother had left behind, a cloth with coins tied inside, memories disguised as objects. Amina opened the box carefully. Her fingers hovered over the earrings. They were simple, worn, but they were the last thing her mother had given her before she passed. Keep these, her mother had said, not because they are worth much, but because they remind you who you are. Amina closed her eyes briefly. Then she picked them up. If they could help Juma, then they still held meaning. She wrapped them in cloth and placed them in her bag. Tomorrow she would try again. She had to. Morning came too quickly. Amina had barely rested, but she rose anyway. Juma was still weak, his breathing shallow, but steady enough for her to leave just for a few hours. "I'll be back," she told him gently. He nodded faintly. At the market, the day began like any other. Noise, movement, life. But Amna moved differently today. Faster, more focused. Every customer mattered more than usual. Every coin felt heavier. Her smile remained, but it carried something behind it now. Urgency. She worked without pause. Hours passed. Still not enough. By midday, the heat was intense, pressing down on everything. Sweat gathered at her temples, but she didn't slow down. Then a familiar voice. "You look tired today." Amina turned. Nasor Zawadi stood there, watching her, not like before, not just observing, but noticing, really noticing. She gave a small smile. "It's a long day." His eyes lingered on her face, on the exhaustion she hadn't been able to hide completely. "What happened?" he asked. The question surprised her. Most customers didn't ask. Most didn't care. "It's nothing," she said quickly. Nasser didn't move. "Tell me." His voice was calm, but firm. Amina hesitated. She wasn't used to sharing her struggles with strangers, especially not someone like him. But something about the way he stood there, not demanding, not judging, just waiting, made it harder to dismiss him. "My brother is sick," she said finally. The words felt heavier once spoken. Nasser's expression didn't change much, but his attention sharpened. How sick? Amina swallowed. "Bad enough," she replied quietly. "And the hospital?" he asked. "I can't afford it," she said simply. There it was, the truth, unfiltered. Nasor looked at her for a long moment. Then, without thinking, he reached into his pocket. Money, enough to solve the problem instantly, to fix everything, to end the struggle. He placed it on the table. "Take it," he said. Amina stared at the money. Her heart skipped. For a moment, just one moment, hope flared. Immediate, bright, dangerous. This could blow Juma. This could change everything. But then something else rose, stronger, slower, steadier. She shook her head. "I can't." Nasor frowned slightly. "Why?" Amina met his gaze. "Because I didn't earn it," she said. His eyes narrowed. "It's help," he replied. "And I'm grateful," she said. "But I can't take it like that." Nasser wasn't used to this. People didn't refuse him. Not money, not solutions, not power. "Your brother could die," he said quietly. The words hit hard. Amina felt it. Deep, painful. But she didn't look away. I know she said. Silence stretched between them. The market continued around them, unaware of the moment unfolding. Nasor studied her, trying to understand. Why would someone choose struggle when help was right there? Then why refuse? He asked. Amina's voice softened. Because if I take it like this, I lose something too. Nasser didn't speak. I don't want to survive by depending on someone I don't know, she continued. I want to stand on my own, even if it's hard. Her words were not proud, not defiant, just honest. Nasor slowly withdrew his hand. For the first time in a long time, he felt something unfamiliar. Respect. Not the kind people gave him because of money, but something quieter, something real. You're stubborn, he said. Amina smiled faintly. Maybe. He looked at the money in his hand, then back at her. You'll come to me if things get worse, he said. It wasn't a question. Amina hesitated, then nodded slightly. Maybe. It wasn't a promise. But it wasn't a refusal either. Nasser turned to leave, but before he did, he paused. For just a moment. You don't have to do everything alone, he said. Amina didn't answer, because part of her knew he was right. But another part, the part that had kept her strong for so long, wasn't ready to let go. As Nasser walked away, the market slowly returned to its rhythm. But something had changed. Not loudly, not visibly, but deeply. Because now, this was no longer just curiosity, no longer just observation. It was something more. And for the first time, both of them could feel it. Even if neither of them fully understood it yet. That evening, Nasor Zawadi did something he had not done in years. He couldn't stop thinking about someone. Not a business rival, not a contract, not a threat, but a girl, a poor girl standing behind a small food stall, who had refused his money without hesitation. It didn't make sense. People had lied to him for money, betrayed him for money, respected him only because of money. And yet, Amin and Jerry had looked at it and said no. Nasor stood in his penthouse apartment staring out over the city lights. From this height, everything looked distant, controlled, predictable. But inside him, nothing felt controlled. Why would she refuse? Was it pride? Or something else? He replayed her words in his mind. If I take it like this, I lose something too. What could be more important than saving her brother Nasser? Exhaled slowly. He didn't understand her. And that unsettled him. The next morning, he made a decision. Not a business decision. Not a calculated move. Something different. Take me there, he told Quito. Kariakou, Sir Quito asked. Yes. No hesitation. No explanation. The drive felt shorter this time. Or perhaps Nasor was just more aware of where he was going. When they arrived, the market was already alive. The same chaos. The same movement. The same energy that refused to slow down for anyone. And again, he saw her. Amina. But today, something was different. Her smile was still there, but weaker. Her movements were slower. And there was something in her eyes. Something heavy. Nasser stepped out of the car immediately. The crowd reacted as always. Fear, distance, silence. But he moved through it without noticing. His attention was already locked on her. When he reached the stall, Amina looked up. For a moment, her expression softened slightly. "You're back again," she said. Nasser nodded. "You look tired," he replied. Amina let out a small breath. "It's been a long night." He studied her more carefully now. The exhaustion wasn't just physical, it was deeper. "How is your brother?" he asked. The question landed quietly. Amina's hands paused, then continued moving. "Not better," she said. Her voice was calm, but something in it cracked. Just slightly, Nasser noticed. "Have you taken him to the hospital?" he asked. Amina shook her head. "I'm trying. The word felt fragile, like something breaking slowly. Nasser's jaw tightened. "You don't have time to try," he said. "You need to act." Amina looked at him. This time, there was a hint of frustration in her eyes. "I know that," she said. Her voice wasn't rude, but it wasn't soft either. "I'm doing everything I can." Nasser paused. He wasn't used to being spoken to like that. Not with honesty, not without fear. And yet, he didn't feel offended. He felt corrected. There was a difference. "I can help you," he said again. Amina shook her head immediately. "No." The answer came faster this time. Stronger. Final. Nasser frowned. "Why are you so determined to struggle?" he asked. Amina's eyes held his. "Because it's mine," she said. The words were simple, but firm. "My life, my fight, my responsibility." Nasser stared at her. There was no anger in her voice, no bitterness, just conviction. "I'm not about asking you to give up your pride," he said. Amina gave a small, tired smile. "It's not pride." "Then what is it?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "It's dignity." The word landed heavily between them. Nasser felt it. Not just heard it, felt it, because for years he had lived without it. Not in the way she meant. People respected him, feared him, obeyed him. But no one had ever given him dignity. They saw his power, or his scars, never him. And yet this girl who had nothing was protecting hers like it was everything. Nasser looked away briefly, for the first time in the conversation. That alone said enough. Amina returned to her work serving another customer. The moment passed, but something remained, unspoken, unresolved. After a few minutes, Nasser spoke again. "Then let me earn it." Amina paused. "What?" He met her eyes again. "Let me earn the right to help you." She stared at him, confused, suspicious, curious. "What does that mean?" she asked. Nasser didn't hesitate. "It means I don't give you money," he said. "I work for it." Amina blinked. For a second, she thought she had misunderstood. She asked. "Yes." "At my stall?" "Yes." The idea was so unexpected, so absurd, that she almost laughed. But when she looked at his face, she realized he was serious. "You don't even know how to do this," she said. "I can learn. You'll get tired?" "I've been tired before." "You'll leave after 1 hour." I won't. Amina studied him carefully, searching for something. A reason, a joke, a lie. But she found none, only determination, and something else, something quieter, something real. Why, she asked, finally. The question lingered. Nasser took a breath. For once, he didn't answer immediately, because the truth was complicated. Because part of him didn't even fully understand it. But he said what he could. Because you refused me, he said. Amina frowned slightly. And that matters? Yes. Why, Nasser held her gaze. Because no one else ever has. Silence. Amina felt something shift inside her. Not trust, not yet, but something closer. She looked at her stall, at the work, at the long day ahead, then back at him. You'll start with washing plates, she said. Nasser nodded. Fine. And you don't get paid unless you finish the day. Fine. And if you complain, you leave. I won't complain. Amina hesitated one last time. Then she stepped aside slightly. All right, she said. Let's see if you're serious. Nasser removed his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and for the first time in years, the scarred billionaire stepped into a world where money meant nothing and effort meant everything. And as the market watched in disbelief, something extraordinary began. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. Because this was no longer just curiosity, no longer just interest. This was the beginning of something that would change both of their lives. The first plate Nasser Zawadi washed, he dropped. It slipped from his hand, hit the metal basin, and cracked with a sharp sound that cut through the noise of the market. Every head turned. Amina didn't. She continued serving a customer, as if nothing had happened. But when she was done, she walked over slowly, looked at the broken plate, then at Nasser. You're paying for that, she said calmly. There was no anger, no shock, just fact. Nasser stared at the pieces for a moment, then nodded. Understood. Around them, whispers began. Is that him? The scarred man? What is he doing there? Why is he washing plates? Some laughed quietly. Others watched with disbelief. A few shook their heads. This didn't make sense. A man like him, standing behind a roadside stall, sleeves, rolled up hands in dirty water. Impossible. And yet, there he was. Nasser bent down, picked up the broken pieces carefully, and set them aside. Then he reached for the next plate. His movements were stiff at first. Unnatural. He had never done this before. Never needed to. Water splashed onto his shirt. Soap slipped through his fingers. His grip was too tight, then too loose. Another plate nearly slipped. He caught it just in time. Behind him, a group of young men snickered. Look at him, one said. He doesn't even know how to wash plates. Nasser heard them. He heard everything. But he didn't react, didn't look back, didn't respond. For once, he chose silence, not the kind that commanded fear, but the kind that endured. Amina noticed. That mattered, as men in his position would have walked away, would have demanded respect, would have turned humiliation into anger, but he stayed. He kept washing, slowly, awkwardly, but consistently. Minutes passed, then an hour. The sun climbed higher, The heat intensified. Weight gathered along Nasser's forehead, sliding down toward the edges of his scars. His hands grew rough from the water. His back began to ache, and still he didn't stop. Amina worked beside him, occasionally glancing his way. Watching, not judging, just observing. "Rinse them better," she said at one point. Nasser adjusted immediately. "Not like that," she added, stepping closer. "Like this." She took a plate from his hand and demonstrated. Her fingers moved with ease, effortless. Years of repetition. Nasser watched carefully, then tried again. Better. Not perfect, but better. Amina nodded once. Good. That one word felt different. Different from praise in boardrooms. Different from approval in contracts. Because this he had earned. Time passed. Customers came and went. Some stared openly. Others whispered behind their hands. But gradually, something changed. The laughter faded. The mockery softened. Because no matter how strange it looked, he wasn't leaving. He wasn't pretending. He was working. Amina noticed that too. During a quieter moment, she handed him a cup of water. "Drink," she said. Nasser took it. "Thank you." He drank slowly, the cool water cutting through the heat. "You can stop if you want," Amina added. Nasser shook his head. "I said I would finish the day. You don't have to prove anything," she said. He looked at her. "I do," he replied. Amina didn't respond, but something in her expression shifted slightly. Less guarded. More open. By late afternoon, Nasser's movements had improved. He no longer fumbled as much. His hands had found a rhythm, imperfect but steady. Wash, rinse, stack, repeat. Simple, yet strangely grounding. For the first time in years, his mind wasn't filled with strategies or calculations. Just action and something else. Peace. It was unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. Then a voice cut through the moment. "Well, well." Both of them turned. The same man from the previous day stood nearby, the well-dressed stranger who had made Amina uncomfortable. His eyes moved from Amina to Nasser, then back again. "What's this?" he said, with a smirk. "You've hired help." Now Amina's expression hardened slightly. "He's working," she said simply. The man chuckled. "Working," he repeated. "That one." He stepped closer, studying Nasser more carefully. Recognition flickered. His smirk widened. "Oh," he said slowly. "I see." The air shifted. "You're wasting your time here," the man continued, turning back to Amina. "You could be earning real money." "I told you." "I'm not interested," Amina said firmly. The man leaned in slightly. "You won't always have the luxury of saying no." Nasser straightened. His posture changed. Not aggressive, but present, enough to be noticed. The man glanced at him again. "And you," he said. "Do you even know who you're standing next to?" Nasser didn't answer. The man laughed softly. "Of course you don't," he said to Amina. "That's why you're treating him like this." Amina frowned. "What are you talking about?" The man opened his mouth, then stopped. Something in Nasser's gaze, something quiet, controlled, made him hesitate. For a moment, tension hung in the air. Then the man stepped back. "This isn't over," he muttered before turning and walking away. Silence followed. Amina looked in at Nasser. "Do you know him?" she asked. Nasser shook his head. "No." She studied him for a second, then nodded. "Good." The moment passed, but something lingered. A warning. An uncertainty. Something just beneath the surface. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the market, Amina started packing up. Nasser finished washing the last plate. His hands were sore, his shirt damp, his body tired in a way he hadn't felt in years. But when he looked at the stack of clean plates, he felt something else too. Satisfaction. Real. Earned. Amina handed him a small bundle of coins. "Your pay," she said. Nasser looked at it, then at her. "This is less than I gave you yesterday," he said. Amina smiled faintly. "That's because today you earned it." He took the money slowly. The coins felt heavier than any payment he had received before. Not because of their value, but because of what they represented. Effort, time, dignity. Nasser closed his hand around them. And for the first time, he understood what Amina had meant. As they stood there side by side, the market slowly quieting around them, neither of them realized that something far deeper had already begun. Something neither money nor power could control. The next morning, the story had already spread. Not through newspapers, not through official channels, but through whispers. Kariakou did not need headlines. It needed only people, and people talked. They say the scarred man worked at her stall all day. I heard he washed plates like a servant. No, I heard he's rich, very rich. Then why would he do that? Maybe he's mad. Or maybe she bewitched him. By the time Amina arrived at her stall, the air felt different. Eyes followed her. Not the usual passing glances. Longer, heavier, curious, suspicious. She noticed it immediately. "What is it?" she asked a neighboring vendor. Mama Rahima, an older woman who had been selling vegetables for years. Mama Rahima leaned closer. "They're talking about you," she said quietly. Amina sighed. "About what?" The man Mama Rahima replied. "The one who worked with you yesterday." Amina paused for a moment, then continued setting up her stall. "Let them talk," she said. But inside she felt it. That subtle shift. The way attention could turn from invisible to overwhelming. She had lived quietly for years. Now suddenly she was being watched, judged, measured. And she didn't like it. Across the city, Nasser Zawadi sat in his office staring at a report he hadn't read. For the first time in a long time, his focus was elsewhere. Not on numbers, not on deals, but on memory. The feel of water on his hands. The weight of coins in his palm. The sound of laughter, not directed at him in fear, but in disbelief. And Amina's voice, steady, unchanging, real. A knock on the door broke the silence. "Come in, Nasser said." Lydia Wambui entered, her expression controlled but tense. "Sir," she began, "we have a situation." Nasser didn't look up. "What kind?" "Reputation," she said. That word always came first in their world. Nasser leaned back slightly. Explain. Lydia placed a tablet on the desk and turned it toward him. Photos. Blurry. Taken from a distance, but clear enough. Him, standing at the stall, washing plates, sitting on a stool, eating, watching. The captions were worse. Scarred billionaire, spotted in slums. Is he losing control? Mysterious girl influencing powerful businessman. Nasser's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened slightly. Where did this come from? He asked. Social media, Lydia replied. Someone recorded it. It spread quickly. Nasser remained silent. Lydia continued carefully. The board is concerned. Of course they are. This could affect investor confidence, she added. Your image? My image. Nasser interrupted quietly. Is already what it is. Lydia hesitated. Yes, sir. But this makes it unpredictable. Unpredictable. That was worse than feared. In their world, fear could be managed. Uncertainty could not. What do you suggest? Nasser asked. Lydia took a breath. Distance yourself from the situation, immediately, publicly. Nasser looked at her. From a food stall. From the narrative she corrected. From her. The word hung in the air. Her. Amina. Nasser said nothing, but something inside him tightened. People are already asking questions. Lydia continued. Who she is, why you're there, what she means to you. What does she mean to me? Nasser asked. Lydia paused, then answered honestly. That's exactly the problem. We don't know. Nasser leaned back again. For a moment, he almost smiled. Not because it was amusing, but because it was true. He didn't know either. Back at the market, Amina was working harder than usual. Not because of the attention, but because of Juma. He had been worse that morning, weaker, quieter. Every minute she spent away from him felt heavier now. She needed more money, Surya. But customers today were different. Some approached her stall out of curiosity, not hunger. Is it true, one woman asked, that rich man worked here? Amina kept her focus on preparing food. Yes, she said simply. The woman leaned closer. Do you know who he is? Amina shook her head. No, it wasn't a lie. Not completely. She knew he was different. She knew he had money. But she didn't know how much. And she didn't ask. The woman frowned slightly, clearly disappointed, then walked away. More questions followed. More whispers. More looks. And then someone else approached. Lydia Wambui. She stood out immediately. Elegant, composed, out of place. Amina noticed her before she spoke. Can I help you? Amina asked. Lydia removed her sunglasses slowly. I believe so, she said. Her voice was polite, but measured, controlled. Amina waited. You've been in contact with Mr. Nasser Zawadi. Lydia continued. The name landed heavily. For the first time, Amina heard it. Fully. Clearly. Nasser Zawadi. Something about it felt important. I don't know what you mean, Amina replied carefully. Lydia smiled slightly. I think you do. Amina said nothing. Lydia stepped closer. Let me be direct, she said. Whatever the situation is, It needs to stop. Amina's expression hardened. Why, she asked. Because it's not appropriate, Lydia replied. For him? Or for you? Amina crossed her arms slightly. He came to my stall, she said. I didn't go looking for him. That doesn't matter, Lydia said. It does to me, Amina replied. Lydia's smile faded slightly. You don't understand the world you're stepping into, she said. Amina met her gaze. And you don't understand mine, she answered. The tension between them sharpened. Lydia lowered her voice. Men like Nasser don't belong in places like this. Amina didn't hesitate. Maybe that's the problem, she said. Lydia blinked. Just once. It was subtle, but it was there. You think this is about kindness? Lydia asked. Amina didn't respond immediately, because she wasn't sure. Not anymore. Lydia stepped back slightly. This will not end well for you, she said quietly. Then she turned and walked away. Amina watched her go. Her heart was beating faster now. Not from fear, but from something else. Something she couldn't quite name. Because for the first time, this situation didn't feel simple anymore. It wasn't just a man coming to eat, or helping at a stall, or a quiet connection between two strangers. It was becoming something bigger, something visible, something that others wanted to control. And somewhere in the city, Nasor Zawadi was being told the same thing. To walk away, to forget, to return to the world where everything made sense. But neither of them knew yet that the line between their worlds had already been crossed. And going back would not be as easy as everyone believed. By late afternoon, the market no longer felt like a place of routine. It felt like a stage. Amina could sense it in the way people lingered longer than usual, pretending to browse while their eyes remained fixed on her stall. Conversations dropped when she moved closer. Laughter rose too quickly when she passed by. The whispers had changed. They were no longer curious. They were sharp, suspicious, and sometimes cruel. She thinks she's special now. Of course, a rich man noticed her. Girls like her always find a way. Amina heard everything. She always had, but this time it cut deeper. Because it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about something she didn't fully understand yet. Something that was beginning to grow beyond her control. She kept working, serving food, smiling, moving through the day like she always did. But inside, the weight was building. That evening, when she returned home, the air inside the room felt heavier than usual. Juma was awake, barely. His eyes opened slowly when she entered. You're late, he whispered. Amina forced a smile as she set down her bag. I had more customers today, she said. That's good, right? Juma nodded faintly. But his breathing was worse. Amina sat beside him immediately, her hand resting on his forehead. Hot, too hot. Fear rose again, stronger this time. She tried to hide it. You'll be okay, she whispered. I'm here. But her voice betrayed her. Just slightly. Juma noticed. He always did. Did you get enough? He asked quietly. Amina hesitated, then shook her head. Not yet. Silence. Juma looked away. I don't want to be a problem, he murmured. The words hit her like a blow. You are not a problem, she said firmly. But I'm costing you everything he said. Amina leaned closer, her voice stronger now. You are my brother, she said. That's not a cost. Juma's eyes softened. But the guilt remained. Amina looked down at her hands, at the coins she had earned. Still not enough. And then for the first time, the thought came back. Not as a whisper, but as a real option. Nasser. His offer, his help. Her chest tightened. She had refused. Twice. But now, Juma's condition was worse. Time was running out, and dignity felt heavier than ever. Across the city, Nasser stood alone in his office again. The photos were still on his desk. The headlines, the comments, the growing pressure. Lydia had spoken. The board had called. Investors had expressed concern. Everything was pointing in one direction. Walk away. End it. Now. It was the logical choice. The correct decision. The expected move. And yet, he hadn't done it. Because logic had nothing to do with this anymore. He walked to the window, staring down at the city below. For years he had controlled everything, every outcome, every risk, every decision. But this felt different, uncontrolled, unpredictable, real. His phone buzzed again. Another message, another reminder. We need to address this immediately. Nasser ignored it. Instead, he made a decision. When he arrived at Karyaku, the tension was immediate. Stronger than before. People noticed him faster. Whispers spread quicker. Eyes followed him longer. But he walked forward anyway. Straight to her stall. Amina looked up. And this time, her smile didn't come immediately. There was hesitation, distance. Something had changed. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. The words surprised him. Nasser stopped. Why, he asked. Amina glanced around, at the people watching, listening, judging. Because they're talking, she said. They always talk, Nasser replied. Not like this, she said. There was a difference. He could feel it now. They're making it something it's not, she added. And what is it? He asked. Amina hesitated. Because she didn't have an answer. Not one she could explain. Just a customer, she said finally. The words sounded weaker than she intended. Nasser noticed. You don't believe that, he said. Amina looked at him. For a moment she wanted to argue, to deny it, to push him away. But the truth was already there, unspoken, complicated, and growing. This is getting complicated, she said instead. Nasser nodded slightly. Yes, too complicated, she added. Silence. The market continued around them, but the space between them felt still, heavy, real. Amina took a breath, then spoke. You should stop coming here. There it was, clear, direct. Nasser didn't move. Is that what you want? He asked. Amina looked down briefly, then back at him. Yes. The word came out steady, but her eyes told a different story. Nasser saw it, and for a moment he felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, not frustration, but something deeper. Hurt. Because for the first time, she was pushing him away. Not because she didn't care, but because she did. And that made it harder. I understand, he said quietly. Amina's chest tightened. She hadn't expected that. No argument, no resistance, just acceptance. Nasser reached into his pocket, then paused, then stopped. No money, Not this time. Instead, he placed something else on the table. The small bundle of coins he had earned the day before. Amina frowned. "What is this?" she asked. "My pay," he said. "You already took it," she replied. Nasser shook his head. "I'm giving it back." "Why?" "Because I earned it from you," he said. "And I want it to help you." Amina stared at the coins. Her heart pounded. This wasn't charity. This wasn't pity. This was something else. Something harder to refuse. But still she hesitated. "I told you," she began. "I know," Nasser interrupted gently. "I know what you said. Silence. But this is different," he continued. How she asked. "Because I worked for it," he said, "and I'm choosing to give it to you." The distinction mattered. Amina felt it. Deeply. But even so, she shook her head. "I can't," she whispered. Nasser looked at her. Not pushing. Not insisting. Just seeing her, and then he nodded. "All right." He picked up the coins again and stepped back. Amina felt something twist inside her, because part of her wanted to accept, wanted to say yes, wanted to stop fighting alone. But she didn't. She couldn't. Nasser turned to leave. But before he walked away completely, he spoke once more. "If you change your mind," he said quietly, "I'll be there." Amina didn't answer. She couldn't, because her mind was already changing. Slowly, painfully, inevitably. As Nasser disappeared into the crowd, the whispers returned, louder, sharper. But Amina no longer heard them clearly, because now she was facing something far more difficult than judgment. A choice between pride and survival. And somewhere deep inside her, she knew that choice was coming. Very soon. That night, the decision Amina and Jerry had been avoiding finally stood in front of her. Not as a thought, not as a distant possibility, but as something real, something unavoidable. Juma's condition had worsened. By the time darkness settled over the city, his breathing had become shallow and irregular, his small body struggling against something it could no longer fight alone. Amina knelt beside him, her hands trembling slightly, as she tried to keep her voice steady. "Juma, stay with me," she whispered. His eyes opened weakly. "I'm here," he said faintly. The effort it took for him to speak was enough to terrify her. Amina felt panic rising sharp and suffocating. This was no longer about waiting, no longer about trying. He needed help. Now. She grabbed her bag, her fingers searching blindly for the coins she had earned. The same coins she had counted again and again, hoping somehow they would multiply. They hadn't. They never did. She looked around the room, at the small wooden box, at the cloth-wrapped earrings, at everything she owned that might still carry value. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Her chest tightened as one thought pushed forward, refusing to be ignored any longer. Nazor. She closed her eyes. She had refused him. Twice. Not out of arrogance, not out of foolishness, but because she had believed she could stand on her own. But now, this was no longer just about her. It was about Juma. And pride suddenly felt like something she could no longer afford. Amna stood up quickly. "I'll be back," she said. though she wasn't sure Juma could even hear her. She ran, out into the night, through narrow streets, past closed stalls and dim lights. Her heart pounded, her breath uneven, her thoughts racing. She didn't know where to find him, didn't know where he lived, didn't know anything except one thing. He had said, "If you change your mind, I'll be there." But where was there? The market. That was the only place she knew, so she ran. Carriacou at night was not the same place. The noise was gone. The energy replaced by wadoskas and quiet movement. A few late vendors packed up what remained of their goods. A group of men sat near a corner talking softly. A stray dog moved through the empty paths, and Amina ran straight to her stall. Empty. Of course it was. She stopped, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Fear creeping in again. What if she was too late? What if she had waited too long? What if headlights cut through the darkness? A car slewed near the edge of the market, black, familiar. Amina turned. Her breath caught. The SUV came to a stop, and the door opened. Nasor Zawadi stepped out. For a moment, neither of them moved, as if time itself had paused to watch what would happen next. Then Amina took a step forward. "Nasser," she said. His name felt strange on her lips, but right. Nassor's expression changed the moment he saw her. Not because she was there, but because of how she looked. Desperate, tired, and worried. "What happened?" he asked immediately. Amina didn't try to hide it. "My brother," she said, her voice breaking. "He's worse." Nasser didn't hesitate. "Where is he?" "At home," she replied. "Get in the car. No questions, no conditions, no hesitation. Just action." Amina froze for a second, not because she doubted him, but because this moment meant crossing a line she had held on to for so long. But then she thought of Juma, and that was enough. She got into the car. The drive felt endless, even though it wasn't. Amina sat in the back, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her mind raced through every possibility, every fear, every outcome she didn't want to face. Nasor sat beside her, silent, focused, present, not distant, not guarded, but fully there. When they arrived, Amina rushed out before the car had fully stopped. Nasser followed immediately. The room felt even smaller now, more fragile. Juma lay where she had left him, barely moving, barely breathing. Nasser stepped closer, his eyes scanning, quickly assessing. Then he turned to Quito. "We need a hospital. Now." Quito nodded and moved instantly. Nasser bent down carefully, lifting Juma with unexpected gentleness. Amina watched stunned. This man, the one everyone feared, held her brother as if he were something precious. Not fragile, not inconvenient, but important. "Stay with me," Nasser said quietly to the boy. Juma didn't respond, but his breathing continued. And that was enough. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Faster than Amina had ever experienced. Doctors, nurses, equipment, questions, commands. Nasser handled everything. Without hesitation, without delay, without asking for permission. Amina stood nearby, overwhelmed, her hands shaking, her eyes fixed on the doors that had just closed behind her brother. Time slowed. Minutes stretched. Fear filled every space inside her. Then a hand, gentle, steady, she looked up. Nasser stood beside her. "You did the right thing," he said. Amina's voice trembled. "I waited too long." "No," he said firmly. "You came when it mattered." Tears filled her eyes. She hadn't cried before. Not fully. Not like this. Because now she wasn't holding it together anymore. Now she was letting someone else share the weight. "I couldn't save him alone," she whispered. Nasser looked at her. "You were never meant to," he said. The words settled into her, slowly, deeply. For the first time, Amina didn't feel like she had failed. She felt human. Hours later, a doctor stepped out. Amina stood instantly. "How is he?" she asked. The doctor removed his glasses. "He's stable," he said. The word hit her, like light breaking through darkness. Stable. Alive. Safe. For now. Amina's legs nearly gave out. Relief flooded her so suddenly it hurt. "Thank you," she whispered. The doctor nodded. "He's not out of danger yet," he added. "But you brought him in time." Amina nodded. Her eyes moved to Nassar, and for the first time, she didn't hesitate. "Thank you," she said, not quietly, not uncertainly, but fully. Nassar met her gaze, and something in his expression softened. Not dramatically, not visibly to others, but enough. Enough to show that this moment mattered, more than anything else. And in that quiet hospital corridor, between fear and relief, between pride and surrender, something else began to form. Not based on need, not based on power, but on something far more rare: trust. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and quiet fear. For Amin and Jerry, time no longer moved in hours. It moved in breaths. Each rise and fall of Juma's chest behind those doors had become the center of her world. She sat on a hard plastic chair, her hands clasped tightly together, her eyes fixed on nothing and everything at once. Around her, other families waited, some hopeful, some broken, some too tired to feel anything at all. But Amina felt everything: relief, fear, gratitude, and something new. Something she hadn't allowed herself to feel before: dependence. She glanced at Nasser, who stood a few steps away speaking quietly with a doctor. His posture was calm, composed, controlled, but not distant. Not like before. He wasn't standing apart from the situation. He was inside it. Involved. Present. When he finished speaking, he turned and walked back toward her. "The doctor says he'll need to stay for a few days," Nasser said. Amina nodded slowly. "That's good," she replied. "It means they can help him." Nasser watched her for a moment. "You haven't asked how much it will cost," he said. Amina lowered her gaze. "I know I can't pay it," she admitted quietly. There was no pride in her voice now. No resistance, just truth. Nasser didn't respond immediately. Because this was the moment he had been waiting for. Not to prove something, not to win, but to understand. "Then don't," he said. Amina looked up. "It's already taken care of." The words landed gently, but their meaning was heavy. Amina's chest tightened. I can't let you do that, she said instinctively. Nasser shook his head. You already did, he replied. Silence. Amina stared at him. You made a choice, he continued. You came to me. Her throat tightened, and I made mine. She didn't know what to say. Because this time, there was no clear line between help and dignity. No easy answer, just reality. I don't want to owe you, she said finally. Nasser met her gaze. You don't. How can I not? She asked. Because I'm not keeping score, he said. The simplicity of his answer unsettled her. People always kept score. Every favor, every kindness, every debt. It was how the world worked. Wasn't it? Amina looked down again. Her thoughts tangled. Her instincts conflicted. But one truth remained clear. Juma was alive. Because of him. And that she could not ignore. Then let me work it off, she said suddenly. Nasser raised an eyebrow. How? At the stall, she replied. You already started. There was a faint spark in her eyes now. Not pride, not defiance, but balance. Something equal. Nasser considered it, then nodded once. All right. It was not an agreement of debt. It was something else. Something closer to respect. The days that followed felt different. Not easier, but steadier. Juma's condition improved slowly. Each day brought small signs of recovery, stronger breathing, clearer eyes, the return of his voice. Amina stayed by his side as much as she could. And when she wasn't there, Nasser was. He visited quietly, without announcement, without attention. He didn't bring expensive gifts, didn't try to impress. He simply showed up. And that meant more than anything else. At first, Amina didn't know how to react. She wasn't used to someone staying, helping, without expecting something in return. But over time, she stopped questioning it and started accepting it. Not fully, not completely, but enough. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered softly through the hospital window, Juma sat up slightly, his strength slowly returning. He looked at Nasser. You're the man from the stories, he said. Nasser frowned slightly. What stories? The ones people tell, Juma replied. About the scary rich man. Amina froze. But Nasser didn't react the way she expected. He didn't get angry, didn't deny it. He simply asked, and what do they say? Juma shrugged. That you're dangerous, he said. That people should stay away from you. A pause. Then Juma smiled faintly. But they're wrong. The words were soft, but clear. Nasser felt something shift inside him again. Why, he asked quietly. Juma looked at him. Because you helped my sister, he said, and you helped me. Simple, direct, unquestioned. For a moment, Nasser didn't know how to respond. Because, for the first time, someone wasn't judging him by his scars, or his reputation, or his past, but by what he had done. And that felt unfamiliar, but right. Later that evening, Amina stood outside the hospital, watching the sky darken. The city moved around her unchanged. But inside her everything had shifted. She heard footsteps behind her. Nasor. You should rest, he said. Amina shook her head. I'm fine. You haven't slept properly in days. She smiled faintly. I'm used to it. Nasser stepped beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just present. You were right, Amina said suddenly. Nasser glanced at her. About what I couldn't do everything alone, she admitted. The words felt heavy, but freeing. Nasser didn't respond immediately, because this was not something to take lightly. You did more than most people could, he said. Amina shook her head slightly. Not enough. Nasser looked at her. Enough to get him here, he said. Enough to keep him alive. Amina didn't argue, because deep down she knew it was true. They stood there for a while longer, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. Then Amina spoke again. You're not what they say. You are, she said. Nasser let out a quiet breath. Neither are you, he replied. Amina smiled. This time, fully. Not forced. Not guarded. Just real. And in that moment, something settled between them. Not a conclusion, not an answer, but a beginning. Because now, this was no longer about curiosity, no longer about distance, no longer about two separate worlds. It was about something shared, something built, slowly, carefully, and stronger than either of them had expected. The first rumor that truly hurt did not come from the market. It came from the hospital. Amina and Jerry heard it while standing in line at the pharmacy, waiting to collect Juma's medication. Two women behind her spoke in hushed voices, soft enough to pretend discretion, loud enough to be heard. That's her, one said. The girl, the other whispered. The one with the billionaire Amina's fingers tightened around the prescription slip. She's clever, the first continued. Find a powerful man, make him feel needed, and suddenly your problems disappear. The second woman laughed quietly. People like her always find a way. Amina didn't turn around, didn't react. But something inside her cracked. Because this time, it wasn't just curiosity. It was judgment. And worse, it sounded believable. She stepped forward when her name was called, collected the medicine, and walked out without looking back. The afternoon sun felt too bright, too sharp against her eyes. For the first time since Juma had been admitted, she didn't go straight back to his room. She stopped. He stopped near the entrance, trying to breathe, trying to understand what was happening. Because somewhere along the way, her life had become a story people were telling without her. Inside, Juma was awake, sitting up slightly, his strength returning little by little. When Amina entered, he smiled. You were gone long, he said. She forced a smile in return. There was a cue. Juma nodded. Then his eyes shifted toward the door. He was here, he said. Amina paused. Nasor Juma nodded. He left just before you came back. Amina's chest tightened slightly. Did he say anything? Juma shrugged. Just asked how I was feeling. Amina looked away. Something inside her felt unsettled. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure how to feel about his presence anymore. Gratitude was still there, strong, undeniable. But now, There was something else. Doubt. Not about him, but about how the world would see them, and whether that mattered. Across the city, Nasor Zawadi sat in a quiet meeting room, listening to voices that had once held complete authority over his decisions. Otieno Kamau leaned forward, his expression serious. "This has gone far enough," he said. Nasor didn't respond. Lydia Wambui stood beside the screen, where images flickered photos from the hospital this time. Him entering, him leaving, him standing beside Amina. "This is no longer speculation," Lydia said. "It's a narrative. And narratives," Otieno added, "affect business." Nasor leaned back slightly. "They always have," he said. "Yes," Otieno replied. "But this one is different." "How?" "Because it involves emotion," Lydia answered. "And emotion is unpredictable." Silence. Nasor's gaze moved across the room. These people, they understood numbers, risk, control. But not this. Not what he had experienced. Not what had changed. "You're asking me to step away," he said. "It wasn't a question." Lydia nodded. "For your sake," she said. "For the company," Otieno added. "For stability." Nasor let the words settle, then asked quietly. "And for her?" Lydia hesitated. "For her as well," she said finally. Nasser's eyes darkened slightly. "Explain." Lydia chose her words carefully. "People are already judging her," she said, "speculating, attacking her character." Nasser didn't move. "They won't stop," she continued. "Not as long as you remain involved." The truth of that statement hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. For the first time, this wasn't just about him. It was about Amina, and the cost of being connected to him. That evening, Amina left the hospital earlier than usual. Juma was stable, resting, safe for now. But her mind was not. She walked through the city without direction, her thoughts pulling her in different directions. Gratitude, fear, pride, confusion. And beneath it all, something she didn't want to name, because naming it would make it real. And reality felt complicated now. She didn't realize where she was going until she saw it. The market. Karaku. Her stall stood where she had left it, covered and quiet in the fading light. She stepped closer, touched the wooden surface lightly. This was her world. Simple, hard, but hers. And now, it no longer felt untouched. Footsteps approached. She didn't need to turn. She knew. "Nasor, you left early today," he said. Amina faced him. "I needed to think." He nodded. "I understand." Silence stretched between them. Different from before. Heavier. Amina took a breath, then spoke. "They're talking about me." Nasser didn't pretend not to know. "I know. They think I'm using you," she said. His expression didn't change. "I don't." Amina shook her head. "That doesn't matter," she replied. "It does to me." She looked at him, and to the rest of the world she asked. Nasor didn't answer immediately, because the truth was complicated. "They will always talk," he said finally. Amina let out a small, tired laugh. "That's easy to say when you're not the one they're talking about." The words were not harsh, but they carried weight. Nasser felt it. "I can stop it," he said. Amina frowned slightly. How? I walk away, he replied. The words landed harder than he expected. Amina's chest tightened. For a moment she didn't speak, because part of her didn't want that. Didn't want him to disappear. Didn't want this connection to end. But another part, the part shaped by revival, knew it might be necessary. For your reputation, she said. For yours, he corrected. Silence. The air between them shifted again. Amina looked down briefly, then back at him. Maybe they're right, she said softly, and Nasser's gaze sharpened. About what? That this isn't right, she replied. The words hurt more than she expected, because she wasn't sure if she believed them, or if she was just trying to protect herself. Nasser took a step closer. Do you believe that he asked? Amina hesitated. Her heart pulled in one direction, her mind in another. I don't know, she admitted. The honesty hung between them, raw, unfiltered. For the first time, neither of them had an answer. No clear path, no simple solution. Just a truth neither could ignore. This was no longer just kindness, no longer just help. It was something deeper, something that came with consequences. And for the first time, they both felt it fully, not as a possibility, but as reality. And reality demanded a choice. The storm did not begin with rain. It began with a headline. By morning, every major business page and gossip blog across the city and far beyond had picked up the story. What had started as whispers in Kariakou had become a narrative the world could not resist. Guard billionaire entangled with street vendor who is the girl behind Nasser Zawadi. Love or manipulation inside the mystery. Photos filled the screens. Amina at her stall. Amina outside the hospital. Nasser beside her, walking, waiting, watching. The images told a story, not the truth, but something easier to believe. At Zawadi Holdings, the boardroom filled before Nasser arrived. Lydia stood by the screen again this time with more data, more charts, more urgency. Otieno sat with his jaw set, fingers steepled in a posture that suggested final decisions. When Nasser entered the room, did not go silent out of fear. It went silent out of expectation. This is now global, Lydia said without preamble. Investors are calling. Partners are delaying signatures. The narrative is affecting market confidence. Otieno leaned forward. We have drafted a statement, he said, sliding a folder across the table. You will deny any personal involvement and confirm that your visits were part of a charitable inspection. You will distance yourself immediately. Nasser did not touch the folder. Charitable inspection, he repeated. It's clean, Lydia said. It reframes everything. It erases her, Nasser replied. Lydia held his gaze. It protects her. From what he asked. From what people will do if they think she has influence over you, Otieno said. From the kind of attention that destroys lives. Nasser looked at them both, then at the screen, behind Lydia. Amina's face froze in a still image, mid-smile, unaware, unguarded. They are already doing it, he said. Lydia's voice softened. Then don't make it worse. Silence. Nasser closed the folder without reading it. No. The word landed like a dropped stone. Otieno's expression hardened. You are choosing emotion over stability. I am choosing truth, Nasser said. And the truth is, Lydia pressed, that I went there because I wanted to, he said. That I stayed because I chose to. That she owes me nothing, and I owe her respect. Otieno stood. This is not a philosophy debate. This is business. Nasor stood as well. For once, he said quietly, this is not about business. The room shifted. Something in his tone, steady, unyielding, made even Otieno pause. If you do this, Lydia said, there is no controlling what comes next. Nasor nodded. I know. He turned and walked out. In Kariakou, the market felt different again. Not curious, not merely watchful, charged. Amina felt it as soon as she arrived. Phones lifted when she passed. Conversations stopped, then resumed louder. A group of men leaned against a wall, laughing in a way that felt pointed. She's the one. Someone said, the billionaire's girl. Ask her for a loan, another joked. Amina kept her head down and opened her stall. Her hands moved through the routine stove-pot ladle, but her mind struggled to stay steady. Mama Rahema came over her face tight with concern. My child, she said softly, be careful today. I'm always careful, Amina replied. Not like this, Mama Rahema said. People are not kind when they feel small. Amina nodded. She knew. By mid-morning, the crowd thickened. Customers came, but many came for something else. Proof, spectacle, confirmation of a story they had already decided was true. A young woman approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Is it love? She asked lightly. Or business? Amina didn't look up. What would you like to eat? The woman laughed and walked away. Later, a man dropped coins on the table too hard. Make it quick, he said. Your time must be expensive now. Amina served him without reply. Each comment was a small cut. None deep enough to stop her, but enough to bleed. Near noon, the Black Esv appeared. This time, there was no delay in recognition. People stepped back immediately. Phones rose higher. The murmurs swelled into a wave. He's here. Of course he is. Watch what happens. Nasser stepped out. The heat, the noise, the attention. It hit him all at once. But he walked forward as he had before, through the space that opened around him. Only now, it wasn't just fear. It was judgment. He saw it in their eyes. He felt it in the air. And still he kept walking. Amina looked up. Their eyes met. No smile. No easy greeting. Just truth. You shouldn't have come, she said. Nasser stopped at the stall. I know, he replied. Then why are you here? Because leaving won't stop this, he said. Amina glanced at the crowd, at the phones, at the faces, waiting for a scene. It will make it quieter, she said. Quieter for them, Nasser answered. Not better for you. Amina shook her head. You don't understand. This will follow me. It will change everything. It already has, he said. Silence. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. I can end it, he said. Amina's breath caught. How I tell them the truth, he said. She frowned. And what is that? That I chose to be here, he said. That you didn't ask me. That you refused me. That you owe me nothing. Amina searched his face. That won't stop them, she whispered. No, he said, but it will draw the line where it belongs. A ripple moved through the crowd as more people gathered. A man near the front lifted his phone higher. Say it louder, someone shouted. Tell us why you're here. Laughter followed. Amina's hands tightened around the ladle. Please, she said to Nasser, don't do this. But Nasser turned. Not to them. Not at first. He looked at Amina. Do you trust me? He asked. The question cut through everything. Noise, fear, pride, all of it. Amina hesitated, because trust was not simple. Not after what she had heard. Not after what she had felt. But then she remembered the hospital. Juma, in his arms, the quiet way he had stayed, the way he had never asked for anything in return. Her answer came not as certainty, but as courage. Yes, she said. Nasser nodded once. Then he turned to the crowd. The noise swelled. Say something. Is she your woman? Did you bring her from the street? Nasser raised a hand, not forcefully, just enough. The crowd quieted. Not out of obedience, but curiosity. I came here, he said, his voice carrying without effort, because I wanted to. A few people scoffed. He continued. I came back, he said, because I respected her. A murmur moved through them. And I stayed, he added, because she refused me. That made them pause. Phones tilted. Eyes narrowed. What do you mean someone called her out? Nasser didn't look at them. He looked at Amina. She refused my money, he said. She refused my help when it was easy to take it. She chose to stand on her own. The laughter died. Something else replaced it. Confusion. Attention. And when she asked for help, he continued it was not for herself. It was for her brother. The crowd shifted. She owes me nothing, Nasser said. Not her time, not her dignity, not her life. Amina felt her throat tighten. And I owe her this, he said, turning fully to face them now. The truth. Silence spread outward. Not complete, but enough. Judge me if you want, he said. You already have. But do not use her to explain me. His gaze moved across the faces. Because you don't know her. The words settled. Heavy, uncomfortable, real. For a moment no one spoke. Then the first person lowered their phone. Then another. The crowd didn't disappear. But it changed. The edge softened. The certainty cracked. Amina stood very still. Her heart pounded. Her eyes burned. Not from fear, but from something else. Something that felt like being seen, not as a rumor, not as a story, but as herself. Nasser turned back to her. The noise of the market began to return slowly, unevenly. I told you, he said quietly. I would draw the line. Amina swallowed. You made it worse, she whispered. A hint of a smile touched his mouth. Or clearer, he said. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Clearer. Yes. More dangerous. Also, yes. But in that danger, there was truth, and truth was something she had never been afraid of. Around them, the market resumed its rhythm. Not the same as before, not untouched, but moving, always moving. And in that movement, a new reality settled. Not perfect, not safe, but honest. And sometimes honesty was the only ground strong enough to stand on. The days after the confrontation did not become easier. They became quieter, not because people stopped talking, but because the tone had changed. Where there had once been sharp laughter and careless judgment, there was now hesitation. Curiosity remained, but it was no longer as cruel. Some still whispered, some still stared, but others began to see differently. Amna and Jerry noticed it in small ways. A woman who had once mocked her now paid without comment. A man who had laughed too loudly now avoided her eyes. Mama Rahema squeezed her hand one morning and said, "You stood strong." It wasn't approval. It was recognition. And that meant more. Still, nothing about Amina's life had become simple. Juma remained in the hospital, recovering slowly, but not fully. The bills continued. The uncertainty lingered. And the world outside did not forget easily. But something inside her had changed. She no longer felt like she was being pulled between two worlds. She felt like she was standing in one, her own. And for the first time, she allowed someone else to stand there with her. Nasor Zawadi did not return to Kariakou every day. Not because he didn't want to, but because he understood now presence had weight. And that weight could either protect or crush. He chose carefully. When he came quietly. No announcements, no attention, no distance. Sometimes he helped again. Washing plates, carrying supplies, doing the small tasks that had once felt foreign, but now felt grounding. Other times he simply stood nearby, watching, listening, being there. And Amina no longer questioned it. She didn't analyze every moment, didn't push him away, didn't pull him closer. She allowed things to be what they were, uncertain, growing real. One afternoon, weeks later, Juma returned home. The small room felt different with him in it again, lighter, warmer, alive. He sat on the bed, still thin but stronger, watching Amina move around the room. "You smile more now," he said. Amina paused, then laughed softly. "Do I?" Juma nodded. "You do." He hesitated. "Is it because of him?" Amina didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was not simple. "It's because you're here," she said finally. Juma smiled, but he didn't look convinced. That evening, Amina returned to the market. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the stalls. The noise of the day was fading, replaced by a softer rhythm. She began packing up. And then she felt it. That quiet awareness. She turned. Nasor stood a few steps away, not approaching, not interrupting, just there, as if waiting. Amina smiled, not out of habit, but because she wanted to. "You're early," she said. Nasor stepped closer. "Or you're late," he replied. She shook her head slightly. Maybe both. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Then Nasser spoke. "I met with the board again," he said. Amina's smile faded slightly. "And they're still concerned," he said. "That's not surprising," she replied. "No," he agreed. Silence. Amina looked at him. Are you going to listen to them? The question was direct. Important. Nasser held her gaze. I did, he said. Amina's chest tightened slightly. And I listened, he repeated. But I didn't agree. Amina studied him carefully. You're risking a lot, she said. Nasser shrugged slightly. I've risked more for less. That's not the same, she replied. No, he said. It's not. A pause. Then he stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. For the first time, he said quietly, I'm choosing something that isn't about control. Amina felt her breath catch. And what is that? She asked. Nasser didn't hesitate. You. The word hung between them, heavy, unavoidable. Amina looked down briefly, her heart racing. This isn't simple, she said. I know. It won't be easy. I know. People will keep talking. I know. She looked back at him. And you still choose this? Nasser's answer came without hesitation. Yes. Amina felt something shift inside her. Something that had been building slowly, now reaching the surface. Fear. Hope. Trust. All at once. She took a breath, then spoke. I don't want to be saved, she said. Nasser nodded. I don't want to save you. I don't want to lose who I am, she continued. You won't, he said. I don't want to belong to your world, she added. Nasser met her eyes. Then we build one that belongs to both of us. Silence. Amina searched his face. Not for promises, not for perfection, but for truth. And she found it. Not flawless, not complete, but real. And for the first time, that was enough. She nodded, slowly, carefully, but fully. All right, she said, not as surrender, but as acceptance. Nasser didn't smile widely, didn't celebrate. He simply stood there, present, certain. Because this was not the end of something. It was the beginning. Months later, Karyaku had changed. Not dramatically, not visibly to outsiders, but in small ways, real ways. A new clinic stood near the edge of the market, offering affordable care to families who had once had none. Amina's stall had grown slightly still simple, still honest, but stronger. Juma helped when he could, his laughter returning slowly but surely. And Nasser no longer stood apart. He didn't become someone else. He didn't lose who he was, but he allowed himself to be seen. Not just as power, not just as scars, but as a man. And when people looked at him now, some still feared him, some still judged, but others saw something different. Because of her, and because of him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amina stood beside Nasser, watching the market settle into night. You know, she said softly, they don't look at you the same way anymore. Nasser glanced at her. Neither do you. Amina smiled. No, she said, I don't. And in that moment, there were no whispers, no headlines, no distance, just two people who had found something rare, not by searching, not by forcing, but by choosing, again and again and again. Sometimes the world teaches us to judge too quickly. A face, a scar, a title, a rumor. We build entire stories without ever knowing the truth behind them. But real life is not built on appearances. It is built on choices. Amina chose dignity when she had nothing. Nasser chose honesty when he had everything. And in that space between pride and vulnerability, something powerful was born. A connection not based on need, but on respect. So today ask yourself, how many people have you misunderstood? How many stories have you believed without knowing the truth? If this story touched you, let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from and what time is it there right now? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories about my life, love, and second chances. Because sometimes all it takes is one moment of kindness to change everything. Da Juan Tut Kichban. Ohuna.